Welcome to this month's issue of Matters.
Hi, everyone.
Well, good morning, Terry.
Good morning. Okay, let's go.
All right. This month's issue is for stylists, and it'll be based around the relationship that you as a service provider have with the front desk staff and how to interact properly, how to set the tone, and how to really take charge of your schedule and work in concert with the front desk. They're a tremendous asset to you. Any service provider listening to this is absolutely dependent on a great working relationship with the front desk.
Now, there's some rules that we have to put in place. First of all, the thing that we have to think about is every service provider being judged exactly the same as far as how much time it takes to service a guest?
In most salons, yes.
Well, and we don't believe that should be the case.
That's true.
Go ahead, talk about the hairdressers, and now I'll talk about the spa and nail technicians.
Okay. After looking at lots and lots of service providers' numbers over the years and seeing where peak performance happens, you may remember from previous editions of Matters that we talk about the service commitment, which is the dollar per guest overall, the service dollar per guest, and the take-home dollar per guest. When we see that at peak performance, which is significantly above the cost of your haircut price in the service per guest category, it always relates to the guest per man-hour ratio. There comes a point in time where you're pushed beyond your means and therefore are no longer creating a salon experience for your guest. Let's
give them an example. Let's say that the amount of guests that you're seeing per man-hour that you're working is 1.3. You're seeing 1.3 guests for every man-hour.
Which is approximately one guest every 45 minutes.
Right. And when you're at 1.3, your service dollar per guest and your take-home dollar per guest is lower than you'd like to see it. That usually means that you're working at a pace that's too high for you, that you should be at maybe 1.2, 1.25, 1.1, that you shouldn't be at 1.3 because when you're at 1.3, it lessens your productivity, and that means you lessen your service commitment to your customer. If we go back to what Steve always says, to the degree that we deliver extraordinary service, the guest will trust us with more of their money. If you're pushed beyond your means and you're servicing too many guests, you're not able to service the guest beautifully and perfectly. And as a result, your productivity suffers because of it.
Well, and in a way, I think back to the conversation we had once with the Olympic speed skater Dan Jansen and how he talked about...
Oh, you name dropper, you.
A name dropper, yeah,
yes.
Couldn't help it. But we learned so much from him.
Yes, we did.
And his tracking, what they teach an Olympic athlete to do from a tracking standpoint is amazing. He literally had to know what his recipe for success was. He had to know what kind of sleep he needed to have. He had to know what kind of foods he needed to eat, what kind of warm-up regimen he needed to go through in order to skate at peak performance. And when you stop and think about it, he's going around in a circle that never changes. What about us dealing with guests on a daily basis? Every day has a different complexion. Do we know what creates our peak performance? And do we measure to see where we're at? So this whole idea of knowing what your overall dollar per guest is, the service dollar per guest and take-home dollar per guest, and knowing then that that relates to your guest per man-hour ratio and finding what the best rate is. Now, there's two different things that we haven't addressed yet that figure into this. If you're a new stylist, you might be working at a 0.5 or a 0.8, less than one guest per man-hour because you haven't totally built the traffic behind the chair. What you need to pay attention to is how much time is each guest. My suggestion would be keep a note card or a 3x5 card at your station, or have the front desk help you to log your actual service times and then see, based on those service times, where you were able to really create a salon experience. Remember, your two key focal points here are creating a repeat guest and providing a salon experience for every guest that you touch.
And your numbers will indicate if those two things are happening.
Yes.
Well,
The other extreme to that is a stylist or a service provider that's working with an assistant. Your guest per man-hour ratio, if you're working with an assistant, should naturally be higher. You should be on the higher range of 1.7, 1.8, 2.0 guests per man-hour because you've got another person's man-hours assisting you, maybe doing the cleansing part of the service, the blow drying, the applying retouches on color and doing things to help you service more guests. And it has to reflect in that. So please don't think just because we're talking about 1.1 or 1.2, if you're someone that works with an assistant, we're talking to you as well to know what your peak service times are. When are you really creating a salon experience for a guest? And then how do you take what you know and network that with the front desk to bring out your best?
Well, and we're going to go back into that. I want to touch on you talking about service times. If it were me and I ran a front desk or was partnering with the front desk staff, I would purchase a service time clock where I would be able to, as a front desk, timestamp the service when it actually began and timestamp it when it concluded. Trouble is people think that they are faster service providers than they actually are. And then if they're scheduled beyond their means, they're going to cut back on other things that the customer has a right to enjoy. For example, if you ask hairdressers, where do they cut back when they run behind? They say that they lessen the quality of the shampoo, they lessen the quality of the consultation, they don't talk about take-home products or rescheduling the next visit because they know the pressure is on them for their service to be done so they can start servicing the next guest that's there. So no one really knows what service time is really necessary for them to create a salon experience for the guest. Knowing that about yourself and the front desk partnering with you so you're scheduled for maximum productivity, maximum customer satisfaction is key. We find service providers trying to bully the front desk staff, saying, yes, I can take another guest. Yes, I can squeeze this person in. Yes, I can do this. And it's all at the expense of the guest experience in the salon.
You know, there was a subtle little teaching in one of the things you said earlier that maybe could be missed. And it was when you say that when a hairdresser runs behind, they lessen the quality of the shampoo or they lessen the quality of the image profile. I've never had a hairdresser walk up to me and say that they lessen the quality when they get behind. They always come up and they'll always say in conversation with us that they rush through it. Rushing through it is a way to justify it. It does lessen the quality. Anytime that you're rushing through your guest's time with you in any way, it definitely relates to the quality of that service and the quality of their time with you. So please know, are there legitimate times where we run behind? We run behind because we're not really in touch with our own service style and how long it takes to service the guest properly. So that's why, I mean, this topic today is, I've not heard many people in our industry really even speak to it. So please try and dig in and think about your own circumstance and maybe even some of the people you work with. You're probably working next to someone that you know isn't a 30-minute hair cutter, but scheduled 30 minutes. Scheduled on the 30 minutes, on the half hour, all day long. And my gosh, is it amazing to watch how far behind they run by probably mid-morning or late morning every day.
Well, the next thing to talk about is how to partner with the front desk staff so your service times are personalized. Now, there is software out there that allows that to take place.
Almost every software.
So my profile of service times could be custom.
Yes. It does take more effort on both leadership's part, on the front desk staff's part, and on your part, knowing what your peak service time is. And you'll probably have to tweak it to get it right. But think about it. Once it's right forever.
Or it can be changed as my speed and pace quickens. Mm-hmm. It can always be customized differently. That's the beauty of it.
But rarely is everyone in a salon. Rarely do they all work at the same pace.
Oh, gosh, we've never seen that. And as a result of it, if you've got a hairdresser that's very fast and is also the highest producer, the owner sometimes will try to judge the performance of the entire team based around the fastest person in the salon. And that's just not right. So now what we do is we go up, we partner with the front desk team and say, this is my service profile. Help me with it. Watch me. When am I hitting the mark? When am I rushing through? When do you see me pushing myself beyond means? Because I'll tell you, the front desk knows. They're watching. Their job is to facilitate the traffic of the business, and they know more about what you do sometimes than you do because they're answering for it.
They're almost a lost treasure in the salon. They are the keeper of much knowledge, but many times, especially by service providers, are never asked to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can look at them as a resource, and again, a whole salon might be listening to this. Y'all might be listening to this in a staff meeting, and one or two of you are going to immediately take action and probably do something on this. It takes a little bit of time to go through. You're going to spend several weeks really determining what your service times are. But it's worth it. Be the leaders in that salon and then draw everyone else in to get them to do the same.
Let's talk about rescheduling and how this applies and what happens when there is no partnering and understanding with the front desk team.
Well, I personally think that the lack of rescheduling that's done by most people in our industry is where most of the money is left on the table. I know we've addressed this in previous issues, but who better than you working in concert with your front desk staff to determine how to service the guest right and your financial future? You rescheduling is a key to your financial future. It always has been, it always will be. Thinking that you're not fully scheduled yet, that people can call and get in on the same day, that won't happen forever. If it's happening now, it won't happen forever. If you're scheduled 6 weeks in advance or 4 weeks in advance or maybe just 1 week in advance, you know, you might think that that's the end-all be-all. But we have to say, what is the proper service to our guest? And I'm part of the solution. You are always part of the solution. You are driving the bus, so to speak, when you reschedule a guest. We believe that if you don't reschedule that guest today while they're in the salon, you're not completing the service experience or the salon experience.
I'll never forget talking to Linda Michaels, who is our skincare specialist at PSC. And she told me I had to reschedule. There was much turnover at the front desk, and no one's going to know my customers the way I do. No one's going to understand how I need to fill a day better than me. No one's going to want to fill a day better than me. So I had to be in concert with the front desk staff. I didn't want to give up that, not control wasn't the word she used, but I couldn't afford for that to just fill by chance.
Okay. Now I'm struggling a little bit, so I want to bring this out. It's not you and you alone compensating for a front desk that's not capable. The front desk is capable of implementing anything that together you and the salon work on. The thing is that when you really stop and think about the natural salon, the normal salon that really hasn't ever dealt with some of these ideas before. They've got a front desk that schedules haircuts at a set amount of minutes, haircut appointment, X number of minutes, every stylist. Color, they know how to schedule color for the application, then the processing, and then the cut or the finishing work after that, and working a haircut in between. They know how to schedule. They schedule one way for every stylist. Now you've got stylists that are just taking the guests as they come. Service providers that are just doing who's ever written down on the book. And, oh, yeah, there may be a gap there, but I'm not responsible for that gap. The front desk scheduled it. And then after servicing a guest, we're not really working hard enough to reschedule them. Every time that happens, you're asking for more open time slots. You're asking for less productivity. You're asking for less interest from the front desk. The front desk, when they have the opportunity to work in concert with you, it becomes a game. There's always a game within a game. And the front desk has more interest and more involvement and more excitement and enthusiasm over service providers that are involved in their schedule, that care about customer service, that care about the guest's experience while they're in the salon, And it becomes a game. If I'm working 8 hours today, what's my peak performance within that 8 hours? Is it 10 guests? Is it 12 guests? Is it 14 guests? Is it making sure that there's no more than my 30-minute lunch break, if that be the case, and make sure that there's no gaps on the book? Make sure that when we reschedule non-prime time first, and then prime time will fill automatically. It's those people that get involved and work together as a group, where they're working the problem, they're working the situation, are going to always have better relationships. I put it this way. In the years that I worked as a service provider, all the behind-the-scenes people that carried out all the promises that I made and all the commitments that I made, I looked at them as my responsibility to have the best relationship with them that I possibly could. I wanted them to like me so that they would treat my guests better than they treated anybody else's guests. It's so important when we realize that we have 3 customers. The obvious customer, which is the guest that sits in our chair, the people that we work with, both front desk, cleansing technicians, spa technicians and providers, and leadership, all those people that we work with, they're your guest as well. They are a customer. And then the vendors that walk through the door, the people that service, whether it be the gentleman that brings the mail or young lady that brings the mail, the people who deliver packages. Every person that's in front of you has a circle of influence that can bring you business or that can keep business away from you. If we treat everyone like a customer, like a guest in our home, we're going to grow. And if you're one that's going to grow, if you're one that is really out after it, ready to make some noise, ready to build your future one guest at a time in 30 to 60-minute increments, it has to be in concert with the front desk. It has to be a partnership and a team relationship with that front desk. And in most salons, it isn't. In most salons, honestly, it's an adversarial relationship.
Absolutely.
It's an us and them. Those people at the front desk, those stylists.
They don't know how to schedule me properly. They never get it right up there.
Yeah. Or those stylists, they're always in the back room or out and back smoking. I've always got to look for them. You see, that's not how a team works.
And there's an obvious disconnect there.
Yeah, teams don't start out great, but if there's an intent to be great, you can become that. Be the one that leads that in your salon. Don't sit back and say, well, nobody does. You can't control all those nobodies. You can't control everybody else in your salon, but you can pull the trigger on your own potential.
Now let's talk about that case study, because it kind of relates to this in a weird kind of way, but I think it fits here.
Okay. We had an opportunity a couple of months ago in a very significant salon that we do business with and that we coach and that we're proud to call friends. They went through a stylist leaving, which sometimes is referred to as a walkout in our business. The stylist left, and as the salon started to peel back the situation, and Terry, you were very instrumental in this, going down and meeting with the owner and the senior leaders within the staff. Mm-hmm. What we found was that stylist, that service provider, had 711 guests that she was their service provider for. 711 guests. In our studies and in our coaching, someone that's working 40 hours a week.
Just use the example of one guest an hour.
Okay. If we take someone that's working 40 hours a week, they're seeing one guest per hour worked. That's 40 guests in a week. Times 50 weeks worked is 2,000 guests. If we see those guests 10 times per year, it means that we would have 200 guests that we were responsible for.
And they were coming in?
Once every 5 weeks.
Right.
Okay? 200 guests is a far cry from 711 guests. Without redoing the math, if we were to take that all the way up to seeing 1.3 guests per man-hour, we'd be at 260 guests that were required at that ratio. So what that really means is that one stylist wasn't creating a salon experience for every guest. It means that they were creating a bottleneck at the front desk, because the numbers prove that 200 guests would keep us fully scheduled. If we've got 711 that are vying for our time, every 6 to 8 weeks, what we've done is probably train them that really they can only come in once every 10 to 13 weeks, because that's the best they're going to do to get in.
Because when they phone our salon, we say there's nothing available.
Right. Or they're going to bounce around to other salons perhaps, maybe see this service provider every other haircut, or see this one for haircut only and go somewhere else for color. And if you've got guests that are seeing you for a haircut and going somewhere else for color, or vice versa, it probably means that there's a bottleneck in your schedule somewhere, and that either your guest base, the universe of guests that you service, is too large to service properly. And when a guest base is too large, you're working hard. You're not necessarily working smart, because you're looking past all of those opportunities that exist.
Well, and that's one of the things I would also partner with the front desk staff is, let me go through my account base with you. Let's find out the last time they were in. How many have stopped coming? They haven't been back in 120 days. Or any of those customers I certainly miss and want back in here. When's the last time we communicate with the front desk and said, or that we trusted the front desk to say, you know what, you've got enough customers in your base. You're at a point right now that you can't accept any more new customers. That's not said in our industry, but it should be, because sometimes, like you said, we create the bottleneck. We've said yes, 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 because we're not rescheduling. There is availability. We've trained the guests they don't have to reschedule and can get in. So now we've increased our base beyond our means to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And what a dangerous situation to get in.
It's a huge problem, because it says to the guest who can't get in that they're not important. And if you remember, we said earlier that 7 out of 10 guests leave one salon, meaning they leave that stylist and go to another because they didn't feel important. Not because the price was too high, not because they got a bad haircut or color, but because they didn't feel important.
And the dialogue's huge in this situation, because some of you might be saying, my gosh, okay, we've got that situation. I can't accept any more new guests. I'm saturated. I've got enough guests in my base. What do you say to the guest that phones in? Because service providers in the beauty industry always want to please. They're yes people. Yes, I can do it. Yes, I can fit you in. Yes, I can take another one. And instead, the dialogue probably needs to go something like this. At this time in our salon, Mary is no longer accepting new customers, because if she is to accept new customers, it will be at the expense of the guests she's responsible to serve currently. We do have other people on staff poised and ready and certified to take care of your beauty needs. May I assist you in scheduling an appointment with one of our other service providers? It's all in the way it's said, because in that situation, it certainly doesn't say you're not important.
True. Or it could be said that Mary does not have availability anytime within the next 6 weeks. We want to serve you in the best way possible, and Mary has requested that any of her guests that are unable to see her be seen by this stylist or that stylist. They're certified by our leadership here in the salon and wildly accepted by people that have been serviced by Mary in the past. It's just a matter of, if we are not working it, if we're not thinking about it, if we're not really trying. Sometimes, Terry, people get confused because we talk so much about customer service. They think that customer service is pleasing everyone, doing whatever it takes to please everyone all the time. And first of all, it's impossible. And if it is possible, it probably means we haven't set the bar high enough. Because people who set the service bar high enough fail every now and again, or fail actually pretty regularly, because they're trying to do something that's so significant, it can't be done every time. So if we're just kind of in that work mode where we're going to work and we're making the donuts and we're not failing a customer, we're probably not trying hard enough.
Well, and that's when I go back to utilizing the front desk to our advantage. I mean, we only can manage information that we know. So do we know the proper service times per service provider? Do we know how many guests are in everyone's base? Do we know how many new guests are coming in, and established guests, and when's the last activity date of some of our guests? I don't think we're doing enough research and analysis on what is in our businesses. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, we'll get calls and say our traffic count's down. Well, your traffic count might be down because you took too many guests and all of them felt like they didn't get enough individual service, so they went somewhere else. That's why your traffic's down.
And you know, I've heard that several times within the last 4 to 5 weeks, where either salons or stylists that said, you know what, I used to have such a flow of new guests, always had more guests than what we needed, and now all of a sudden we have fewer guests than what we require.
So let's advertise.
So let's advertise.
And that's not what you need to do.
Exactly. Almost all of us right now have enough guests in our business to be as busy as we want to be. We're just not utilizing them. We're not servicing them properly and creating a salon experience and a repeat guest in them, and then tapping into their circle of influence by asking for referrals.
I think that's a great point. That 7-Eleven should have never happened.
Oh, no.
Should have never taken place had the front desk been able to do their job and communicate that we have well enough customers in this hairdresser's base. Also, it wouldn't have happened if the hairdresser absolutely knew how many guests she was responsible for and what her base looked like. That should have never happened. And when should it have been an alert situation? When she hit the 250 mark, the 300, the 350? I mean, for 7-Eleven to happen, look at all of us that didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that really created a problem. And it's going to reflect in the community's perception of how we serve and who we are.
Right, because as we know, when we let people down in the community, they tell others. If we give them what they pay for, that doesn't create any kind of a story or any kind of a positive buzz in the community. Only when we create a wow experience for them does it create the positive buzz in the community that brings us new guests. So, in any given day, if you're touching 10 guests, and if you're just giving them what they pay for, we consider that temporary income. Don't send your kids to private school. Don't buy a new car. Don't change your standard of living.
Even in that 7-Eleven, how many of them were there one time?
Oh,
we don't know that.
We don't know that, but there was probably a percentage that was there just the one time. There was probably a percentage that's been there many times, but have just adjusted to the fact that they can't get in with that person except once every 3 months or so. And therefore, they're going somewhere else, or they're going around. I mean, think about a guest that needs to be in your chair today. And because of your schedule, they can't get in your chair for another 4 to 8 weeks. They're not good advertising for you. Our guests are our biggest source of income. Our biggest source of new business comes from existing guests. If we're not keeping them looking and feeling their best all the time, they're not bringing us new business. Also, how often are you checking on the job you've got with them? That's, to me, where the key opportunity at the front desk is. If it were me, I would ask the front desk, every single guest that I touch, would you please look them in the eye after they've paid for their services and say, is there anything else we could have done today while you were here with us? Is there anything else we could have done to enhance your salon experience today while you were with us? Not was everything okay, because people take that as shallow and they blow that off. But if we were to say, is there anything we could have done? It doesn't say what we did was bad, but is there anything we could have done to better exceed your expectations and your salon experience today while you were with us? And I would want them to write that down so that they could tell me. That's checking on the job you've already got. It's also people who take things seriously.
Mm-hmm. I like it. There are times when customers phone in and they say to the front desk staff, my friend goes to Mary. Is Mary any good? And usually the front desk staff will say, they're all good. Yeah, they're all good. Go to any of them. Becomes just a little giggle right then. The guest isn't wanting something casual from you at that point. They want you to tell them that is a wonderful decision.
And you know what, Terry, for the front desk staff that may be listening right now, why that's so important is that someone's appearance, specifically their hair, is 70% of someone's first impression. When they ask, is so-and-so good, that's like calling and asking if a doctor's good, or calling and saying, is this the endocrinologist that I should be with? What kind of experience do they have? It's such a key question, and sometimes we take those phone calls as if they're an interruption, and we just want to facilitate it. Get them on the boat. Everybody's good. When do you need to come in? And instead of, I know where you were going, was with having something ready to say.
Oh, I get excited about this because if they say, let me tell you a little bit about Mary. Mary's been on staff in our salon for 6 years. She's a graduate of Pivot Point University with 1,500 certified hours. She is not only one of our senior staff members, but she's our artistic director, which means she's responsible for training all of our new talent in our salon and certifying them. Her specialties include short and sassy and formal looks. Her schedule is she's here Tuesdays through Saturdays. May I assist you in scheduling an appointment? Now what I've done a bio on Mary and really helped the customer understand that they'd be in good hands if they chose her. Mm-hmm. It's not, they're all good. I've personalized it. And it's a wonderful way to talk about a team member. It's indirectly given their resume in a few sentences. We've got salons now that their hold key is the staff doing their bio. Hi, this is Terry. I've been on staff here for 15 years. So now, instead of the hold key being music or talking about services, the staff actually is on hold talking about what they do and how they do it and how long they've been doing it. And it's just a wonderful thing to do. And that's what the customer wants to hear. The biggest thing they want to hear is, I'll be in good hands. I've got an expert on the other side of this waiting for me.
We believe that people do business with people that they like and trust. And the more that we can do to personalize our business, the more that we can do to introduce people to more people on our staff, a guest that knows the front desk staff, the cleansing technicians, other service providers, in addition to their hairdresser, are so much more grounded in that business. They're so much more involved in that business than someone who comes through the front door, really doesn't know the front desk staff, gets their hair cut by one person on that team, and then leaves. Those are also more temporary guests. So how welcome someone feels, how involved they feel, how much they know, not by sight, but by name. And I love the idea of bios. And it seems like such an easy thing to get done. But there again, Terry, some will, and unfortunately some won't. Some will listen to that and say it's a great idea. You know, much of learning is really just remembering great ideas we've had in the past. There's very little that's brand new, knock you over the head. Oh my God, I've never heard that before. I'm sure there's a lot on this CD that, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Please don't just check it off and move on. You've heard it before, but have you implemented it? Are you using it? Is it making you money? America is set up not for the people who have ideas, but for the people who hear ideas or have ideas and take them into the marketplace, put themselves on the line with it. They are the people who have the chance to cash in, people who take action on these ideas.
This idea, just even in the bios, I've had people say to me, well, we went back and we created a bio sheet. We handed it out to all the service providers, and they wouldn't complete them. I don't even know how to respond to that. That makes no sense to me. I mean, here you've got someone answering the phone that someone can say, tell me a little bit about, and now I need to provide them with what I want said about me. And we can't get people to comply? It just makes no sense to me. I don't even know how to respond.
Well, think about this, though. The people who do
win,
because now if the front desk has a chance, make up something about so-and-so who didn't turn in their bio, or read the bio that I have on this other hairdresser, which by and large, scripted dialogue, which is what a bio is, scripted dialogue becomes that person's own after using it in a repetitive fashion.
That's right.
And so it won't sound like it's being read. It will be owned by that front desk staff because they know it, they've used it, they use it regularly, and it's a dynamic idea that you've said for years and years, Terry, that why wouldn't we have it? I mean, could you imagine calling an attorney's office or calling any service provider professional and having a receptionist or front desk staff not be able to tell you anything about them? It just wouldn't happen. But it happens in our business, and basically it says to the front desk, wing it. Make stuff up. Just go on your own. You know me, just make it up. I mean, you can't make great money when you just wing it. So what's your choice going to be? Are you going to work on your own bio? Are you going to refine it? Repeat it to one another? Does that make sense? Is that me as a professional? And when you've got it the way you want it, then give it to that front desk staff and let them have fun with it. And you know what? You made their job easier because they don't have to wing it.
Well, what about the times we've witnessed where someone will walk up to the front and said, you scheduled me for a wax. I don't wax.
Yeah.
Why would you schedule me? How do you not know what I do here? Well, a bio listing all the services I perform, what I feel my specialties are, so on and so forth. That would eliminate conversations taking place like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Again, sounds simple. Question is, are you going to do it?
Mm-hmm. And we know it'll make your life easier because the more you sound like an expert, the more you act like one.
And front desk staff, you are the first impression of that salon. It's so important that not only you have a relationship with the service providers, but also that the service providers work with you to make sure that you look the part.
Well, and I'm going to say something that I'm not going to admit to anything. You know that. I mean,
You've done it.
I've been on both sides of this, where I've been the person that had to facilitate the service staff and the person that was a service provider. I don't understand why any service provider in their right mind would ever alienate the relationship they have with a front desk service provider. That makes no sense to me, because indirectly or directly, they're facilitating your traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I upset them? Why would I not have them rooting me on versus rooting against me? The conversation could easily go like this. Thank you for calling ABC Salon. How may I assist you? I would like to schedule an appointment with Bully, hairdresser number 6. I look both ways and I just say, she has nothing available. Who's going to know that I didn't do that or did do that? Now, I'm not going to say that I did ever, but I know that I could. And I know those of you who are listening, think about that. I'm not saying your front desk has, but I'm telling you they could. Do not create an adversarial relationship with them. It's just going to create a breakdown with the entire salon. And they do. You've given them the freedom to facilitate your traffic, your livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Hurry up. Say something positive because you don't like that.
Well, I don't like that. Do I know it exists? Sure it does. Maybe not. I mean, please know that any speaker is going to over-dramatize certain situations in order to teach better and make a point. We're not saying that that's happening in any of your salons
and
right
I've
now.
I've never exaggerated anything.
No, never.
Okay.
But it could happen.
Yes.
And so it gets back to this thing of do you want to work together with the front desk to maximize your productivity, to maximize your potential, and to really help you stay involved and excited in the beauty business. Do you know that majority of time stylists leave our industry within the first 3 years? If they're not lifelong stylists, when they leave is in the first 3 years. And I really think it's because as they come out of school and they go to work in a salon, they feel like the Lone Ranger.
Sure.
They feel like they've got to figure it all out on their own. They don't fit in with the seasoned veterans.
Well, sometimes the seniors want them to struggle the way they did.
The owner and manager doesn't necessarily have time to devote all the attention that that person needs. You have an opportunity here. The opportunity is you fit in when you stay focused on work, when you stay focused on being a great service provider. Think about what we talked about today so far. Knowing your service times, knowing when you're at peak performance, working with the front desk, not against the front desk.
Know how many traffic, what your traffic breakdown is.
Learning the importance of rescheduling, even if this is your first day behind the chair.
Mm-hmm.
From day one, you need to develop the dialogue that allows you to reschedule. I was talking with a salon owner yesterday. We just happened to have come through the back-to-school period of time, and one salon owner was talking to another and said, "Oh, you had your best week last week, didn't you?" And the other salon owner said, "Yes." "And this week really sucks, doesn't it?" And the other salon owner said, "Yes." The first salon owner said, "Well, I just want you to know that's normal. Kids are back in school now. It always dies right after the kids go back to school. Question, does hair grow really any faster or slower depending on what time of the year it is? It doesn't. It grows exactly the same. There shouldn't be these peaks and valleys in your schedule and in your book and how often your guests come to see you. If you're taking charge, if you're rescheduling, if you're creating a salon experience, there shouldn't be these lulls.
Yeah, as a service provider, what are you known for? Someone that you go every 5 weeks to? Or are you a service provider that takes care of guests every 13, 15, sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes 18 weeks? What are you known for?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to pick a service provider, I want someone that's going to be there for me when I need them.
Sure. And a sense of urgency. You know, a sense of urgency is a subtle thing, but another person might call it a hustle factor. You know, if they got that little bit of giddy up, if they got that little bit of moxie.
That's my word.
As a service provider, are you going to have that little something extra that says, you got to be back in 5 weeks. You've got to return in 4 weeks, or I've got to give you a retouch in X number of weeks. People will be part of that. Remember, people buy from people that they like and people that they trust.
If I was a service provider, I would say, you know, I only service 250 customers, and I love having you as my guest.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the hours I work and creating a salon experience and being committed to lifelong relationships, there's only 250 guests that I take care of. And I would say that to my guests to make them feel important, to let them know why I've selected them and how often and what their responsibility is to me and my responsibility to them. That is what partnering is all about. Tell my favorite story.
Okay. We said a little bit earlier, checking on the job you've already got. And it just brought to mind one of my favorite stories that I've learned from. And it goes back into an old-time pharmacy. Think of the pharmacies in your town. Every town still probably has one of them that's old-fashioned. Not a chain drugstore, but an old-fashioned pharmacy where the pharmacist themselves usually is the proprietor of the store.
I remember the one in my town.
Do you?
Do you remember yours?
Oh, yeah. We still have two actually in this town.
Ours was Revco and Medina Drug.
Okay. Ours is Basinger's and J.D. Brown.
Yep.
And both of those, the proprietor is the pharmacist.
Now both are gone now where I was born.
But ours are still there. Anyway, the pharmacist is the proprietor, and they work set up above the store. It's one level up usually so that they can see out into the store where people are shopping. And this particular day, there was a young boy that came in and came over to the pharmacy counter. He was just a little bit above the counter. And the pharmacist walked over to check on him, and little boy looks up and he says, "Mister, do you have a payphone here?" And the pharmacist was kind of amused with him. You can tell it's an old story because today the little kid would have had a cell phone and wouldn't have had to go into a chain drugstore or a regular drugstore. He'd have just pulled the cell phone out of his pocket.
That's right.
But in this era, payphones were still an issue. So he said, "Yes, young man, there's a payphone toward the back of the store," and he pointed it out. And he kind of watched him because he thought, what does this little character need a payphone for? Who does he need to call? And so he watched him, and the little boy went over to the payphone, and he got there, and he looked up at the payphone, and he couldn't quite reach it. And so he kind of jumped once and still couldn't reach it, jumped again and still couldn't reach it, and walked down the aisle of the store and went outside. And the pharmacist didn't think much of it. A couple minutes later, he hears a clanging, and here's this little boy again dragging a milk crate behind him, an empty steel milk crate, and it just was kind of screeching on the floor as he dragged it behind him. And he set it in front of the payphone and stood up on it and put his money into the payphone and dialed a number. And by this time, the pharmacist had to know. He had to at least get over and eavesdrop and listen on part of the conversation because this little boy obviously needed to make a phone call. So he only heard half of the phone call, but he, of course, imagined the rest. Little boy gets through and he says, "Hello, ma'am. I'm calling today to see if I could be your lawn boy." And the person on the other end must have said, "No, thank you. I'm not interested." And he said, "Well, ma'am, before you go, I just want you to know that I'd really like to be your lawn boy, and I would keep your yard looking beautiful. I'd cut the grass and I'd rake up the clippings and make sure you really had a beautiful lawn." And She must have still said no. And the little boy said, well, ma'am, many of my clients like that straight edge along their driveway and along their sidewalk, and I'd make sure you had a nice edge along your flower bed as well. Could I please be your lawn boy? And the lady must have still said no. And he said, well, ma'am, before you go, you must already have a lawn boy, and I'm just calling it, and I want to be your lawn boy, and if I could be, I would be willing to do it for half of what you're paying right now. And the woman must have still said no. And he said, well, ma'am, if you don't mind, thank you for your time, and I'd like to call you back from time to time to check on you and see if I could be your lawn boy. And they hung up. Little boy got down off the milk crate, started to drag it behind him, and the pharmacist just had to go up to him. He went up to him and he said, young man, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. He said, if you're looking for work, I've got some things around the store here that you can do. And the little boy looked up and without hesitation, he said, well, mister, he said, I wasn't looking for a job. I was really just calling to check on the job I've already got. And why I like that story so much is that the wisdom of youth, that young man was calling to check on the job he already had. He was that lady's lawn boy. And he did want to truly service her. And how often are we checking on the job we've already got? Are we talking to the people that we serve? Do we realize the importance of what we do, that we alter what's 70% of their first impression? That what people exchange their money with us for is the added confidence that comes from looking and feeling their best. You see your guests before any important time in their life. You see them before their first days of school. You see them before first communions and bar mitzvahs. You see them before an important school dance, before a school picture. You see them before proms. You see them before graduations. You see people before court dates. You see them before their weddings. You see them before a job interview. Any time where the added confidence that comes from looking and feeling their best is important, they sit in your chair, not anywhere else. They come to you.
Well, checking on the job that you've already got doesn't just apply to the customer. It also is in reference to the people that do the job with you every day.
Absolutely.
Checking on the job you've already got with your front desk staff and your support staff and other team members.
Exactly. I mean, are you a team member that can be counted on? Are you the person that somebody would think of first if they needed help? Or are you the person that they'd think of last? Always better to be the person that a teammate thinks of first.
Go back and check on the jobs you've already got.
Thanks for your time today. Have a wonderful month, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. We have a few afterthoughts for this edition. While talking about putting the information in places, for example, the bio, what happens with the bio after it's completed and filled out? What I encourage when I teach a class called First Impression, which is a full-day class for front desk staff, is for them to purchase an industrial-size Rolodex. And the reason I like a Rolodex is because it's not a binder that you can put in a drawer or it can be hidden easily. The bio then can be transferred to one of the cards in the Rolodex, acting as a guideline for scripting. Like it would say how many years you're there, where you're a graduate of, how many certified hours, what your specialties are, what your schedule is. And of course, this bio needs to be updated probably once a year or every other year minimum. And then the front desk staff can just flip in the Rolodex, look at it. I think Steve made mention earlier that when you say this multiple times, it becomes memorized, it becomes your dialogue, and it really acts as a guideline at first. But what I like about the Rolodex is I know I've got somewhere to go. When you're facilitating a staff of 30 or 40 service providers, it's hard to personalize conversations with the guest about them. Everyone kind of falls into one category. This really allows you to keep it specific and specialized. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to address.
A couple of things that I'm thinking about as afterthoughts is that while we've spoken a great deal about the need to have a great working relationship with the front desk, what types of things, again, in review, can they really do for you? They can reflect to you and work with you on establishing what your peak service times are. What are the time frames that you seem to work the best in? They also know things like what are the most difficult times a day to fill in your schedule. Your schedule, not the salons, but yours. They know the most difficult times to schedule people at. That's where we begin to schedule, keeping prime time available for those people who can only be in prime time. They can also keep you informed either at the end of the day or throughout the day as to how your results are. How are you doing? Are you on pace? Are you off pace? What's your service dollar per guest, your take-home dollar per guest? Things like that I think is it's just when you're working together with people. In a way, I'd like for you to think of the front desk as kind of your new best friends. But with that being said, I want it also to be known that they're your new best business friends, not your new best personal buddies that we hang around with and party necessarily. What comes to my mind when I think of that is the phrase that I heard a long time ago that said that small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. And what we're trying to foster here really is that you focused together with the front desk and your salon's leadership, focused on ideas. Ideas that if you put into action will have the greatest impact on your financial future and on your happiness with working behind the chair and working in the salon that you currently work in. So we wish you all the best, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.